I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursdays, Season 2, recorded on February 25th, 2016. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is command. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have the live chat room. It's available right below the main video window here. We'd love to have you log in. There's a login button bottom left. Just click that and choose guest account. Put your name in there. That way we know who you are. A few of you are logging in right now, and we always appreciate that. If you have questions during the program, just drop that in the chat room, and we will try to pick them up as we go. If you're listening to the recorded version or need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, send us an email. Contact us coaching@gallup.com. There's also a contact form right there on the live page. You can fill that out. We get that as well. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. You can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening, which becomes more important as we move along here, that you are getting these automatically downloaded to your phone to listen to in the car, in a train, on a plane, those kinds of things. Recapture that time you would normally be doing something else a great way. A lot of people say to me, Jim, I don't have 45 minutes to just sit and listen to a Theme Thursday. But so often times during a commute or when you're traveling, you can listen to several of these. Paul Allen, in our most recent Call to Coach, said he listens to them at 2x speed, so you can get twice as many in. That's a way to do it as well. Many of the podcatchers out there support 2x, and it's not chipmunk sound. It sounds normal. It's just very fast, sped up. All the spaces are taken out. A great way to recoup that time. Of course, don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com, and we have everything available over the coach's blog at coaching.gallup.com. Micah Librant is our host today. She's a learning and development consultant with Gallup. And Micah, I always look forward to Thursday mornings with you, and welcome to another Theme Thursday.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here.
Yeah, we have command today, and I'll have to admit, on the Facebook group, so if you go to facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach, we've been having a discussion about command all week. This is an interesting one, and even the ones that I've done when we talk to people about it, I think when Kurt would always say he wanted to love all 34 of these themes, and command, we were just out at a session, a live session on Monday morning. I got to go out with Jeremy Petrosini on one of those, and somebody said command, and you heard oohs from the audience. So our goal today, Micah, is to take the ooh out of command. Why don't you talk a little bit about it?
Or to turn it into more of a ooh.
There you go.
I think it's probably for a reason. So command is the least commonly occurring theme in people's top 5. And for that reason, if for nothing else, I think it tends to become a little bit more of a caricature than it needs to be, because the chances that you know and love somebody with command are lower than any other theme. So even that by itself gives us a reason that maybe some people haven't had the opportunity to fall in love with it. But my goal today is to give you a little bit of ooh and help you fall in love with command.
Let's do that. Let's dive in.
Awesome. So a reminder that you can always download our companion guides. Jim, will you just tell us the quickest place to go if people don't have that yet?
Yeah, right now it's on the live page. So go to coaching.gallup.com/live. If you're within the week or so, we put these out. We do have a list of all of them on our Facebook group. So facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach. So we have a list there of everything we've made available.
Great. So I download them every morning from another place. I go to gallup.eventbrite.com. That's another great place to get a reminder about our weekly sessions, and you can download the PDF companion guide there. What we will do is I will structure our time together today to walk you through this companion guide. So at the very top, you'll notice just our quick definition of command, and that's the same definition you'll find on the Clifton Strengths Finder resource, a quick reference guide, that two-sided sort of heavier cardstock that we hand out in our sessions, and you can find it online. It's also the definition that you'll find on your theme sequence report, so just that short definition, and it says, people exceptionally talented in the command theme have presence. They can take control of a situation and make decisions. Really what command is all about, I think is, and don't take this as a negative, command is about explosion and presence. It's not about sort of passivity. It's the opposite of that. It's not necessarily being aggressive, but not being passive. The ability to be the person who's comfortable standing up and saying what needs to be said. It's the kid on the playground who everybody else tends to follow. And when we say explosive, that can be a positive thing. It can also be a negative thing. I was speaking with one of my good friends who has command to try to get a better of a handle on it earlier this week, and he said, you know what? Sometimes you need explosions in order to break through barriers. Sometimes you need somebody with command to bring that sort of clarity, presence, persuasion to help us get through and move on to where we're going. Of course, an explosion in a bad way can, leave body parts in its wake. But what command is about is I think the presence, the courage, the ability to be clear and almost dispassionate in an influential way to move the process forward. Command is sort of an external theme in that it's about influencing others. I was trying to help clarify the difference between command and self-assurance. Self-assurance is it comes from within. I trust my own ability, and that maybe is what gives me presence. Whereas command it's more of a group presence thing. I can help us get somewhere, and so command needs people to influence, needs a challenge. I think about people with high command as being decisive, maybe kind of controlling, certainly opinionated, but at the same time, I work with people with command who are just incredibly inspirational because of that ability to say, to sort of believe and operate in absolutes. They can be the person who says, yes, you can do it, and leave no uncertainty, and in that way, it's very inspirational.
Yeah, I love that term, inspirational. I don't think I've thought of command as inspirational before, but again, our bias tends to make it bossy. That's kind of what we say, and I love that focus on inspiring, because really that's when you're taking charge, when you're taking the leadership. It's about bringing a group. We often talk about the balconies and the basements of this, and that basement being that it's about me, and the balcony being it's about taking others in those directions. And so, Micah, before we dive in a little bit, when we think about raw versus mature and balconies versus basements, I've gotten that question a bunch on Facebook lately about when we say those terms, are they the same or are they different? In other words, does raw equal basement and does balconies equal maturity? How do we see that here at Gallup?
They're similar, but they're not the same. So balconies and basements is actually my good friend Stosh Walsh was the very first one to use it. He was in a leadership group, and somebody asked him to explain where are the vulnerabilities, and he started to use this word about balcony in a basement to explain that there's some sunny places where you want to spend most of your time, and that's a balcony. And then there's some dark places where you can go to when you're unhealthy or when you're maybe hungry, angry, lonely, tired, as I like to say, or disengaged, or your well-being is down, and that's a basement. So the balconies and basements are sort of like the dark side and the Jedi side of your own themes. And raw and mature is a little bit more about the developmental journey. So raw and mature doesn't mean good and bad. Balconies and basements kind of does.
Okay.
I would say that way.
I love the word development that you put in there. In other words, to separate that out. So one is kind of speaking to how we can develop those in a very constructive way. The other's, what I hear you saying is kind of the output, what we see, right, in that, or how we feel at that particular time. So I love separating those. That's a great answer, and will help me, because it's just been a question even I have had at times. We've thrown those terms around interchangeably, and they kind of are, but you're saying they kind of aren't too.
I think that raw, I like to think about raw as has a lot of potential to it, whereas a basement, you might have to work a little bit harder to chip away some barriers that prevent it from being potential. So raw is might just be young, might be inexperienced, might not be bad. It might just be a little bit more about it hasn't developed yet. And of course, we can slip back into that raw. I think about we always have the raw with us. We hopefully don't always have the basement with us. I think a basement behavior is behaviors that you have added to your talents that are unproductive or that prevent those talents from getting out. Whereas raw themes that's always who you are. When you practice and when you're intentional about using that raw in a mature way, then it's helpful for others.
It
So they're
speaks.
very similar. Honestly, it probably doesn't matter if you understand the difference between both of them, but when
Yeah.
we talk about raw and mature, I think it comes back to, what can we do for others to really help them live in a more polished way?
Yeah. I think it speaks to the idea of potential.
Hmm.
From that, right? I have that potential. These are the things, and the raw is kind of in its minimum form, and the mature is in its worked out form. And we've spending this season, you and I have been spending a lot of time talking about taking it from raw to mature, because even though we have these five in this sequence, it doesn't necessarily mean we're using them in that, right? In other words, this is what I do, this is what I have. There is some action. Doesn't mean you're perfect at it from going out the gate, right? You still may have some areas where it's because you haven't exercised it enough, or you haven't built that, you haven't invested, we would say, in it, that it's still in a very raw state. Let's talk about raw versus mature. When we think of command, let's go through some of the things that we would say raw and mature.
Sure. So I try to give you these raw and mature as being like I try to go to both sides with each one of them. So not just a list of raw and a list of mature, but I try to help you sort of see how can this behavior play out where there's still a little bit more potential, and what does it look like when it's really played out in that way. So hopefully what you end up with is lots of different dimensions to the command theme. So the first raw and mature partnership I have here is reactive versus proactive. So raw command can be very knee-jerk, can be very, like you say something and it upsets me, and so I'm going to go after the jugular right away. Versus the mature command is, I know what I'm speaking for. It might be values-driven. It might be that you're sort of gaining influence from other people and being a diplomat or for them. And it's similar almost to belief there. So it's being for something rather than just against things. Raw command leaves people in your wake. Mature command leads people through the wake. So a way I explain that, I hope that gives you a picture. So raw command is, it's all about me. It's a little bit more, and this might be a developmental thing. We know that developmentally human beings tend to be a little bit more self-centered as they mature. But the raw command is, it's all about me, and I'm going to do anything I can to break it through these barriers. But the mature side of that is, hey, this is an influencing theme. I can be the voice that helps break down barriers for all of us. I'm comfortable being the tip of the spear and leading people through that. Raw command can be defensive. Mature command can be a defender. Speaking with people with high command, often they talk about the protective nature of it, and I think that can be a pretty cool way to see command is because you're comfortable being the driver's seat, being the tip of the spear, being the person who says, here's where we're going. You can be pretty protective and defend those that you love or those that you're speaking for. Not to get into politics, it is, if you're watching the recorded version, it's almost Super Tuesday, so we've got lots of politicians to think about here and lots of conversations to think about. And I think about raw command being divisive. Being something that says, because you bring such clarity with command and because you press for truth, you can press on those areas that are divisive, and you can be the person who divides, or you can be influential. So that's the other side of it. So I think that the opposite side of the same coin is, am I going to divide people, or am I going to unite them around a common goal? Another cartoon that popped into my head here was raw command is don't poke the bear. Have you ever heard that said about people? And you might imagine a specific person when you hear that. They say, oh, don't go there, right? But the other side of that is this idea of a mother bear. And they can be equally loud, their teeth can be equally sharp, but I think it gets at, what is the motivation? Are you just laying around waiting to be prodded and you're going to explode at any moment? Or do you have some purpose and some value and something that your command really executes for? And the final piece that I have here, I got really metaphorical on us this week.
It was
My
good.
final,
You did a nice job. I like it.
final one on raw versus mature is, raw is the atomic bomb and mature is the laser-guided missile. So an atomic bomb takes out everything when something goes off. But a laser-guided missile knows exactly what are the battles that are the most important that I need to take out in order to get us to go forward. So it's a little bit more focused.
Maureen in the chat makes an interesting analogy too. That like throwing a baseball, the raw form is throwing that baseball at 100 miles an hour. The mature is throwing that at 100 miles an hour and actually hitting the target. Then
Yeah.
she throws in the basement is throwing that at 100 miles an hour at someone with intent. you know,
At their head, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yes, which never happens in Major League Baseball. But that being said, that's a good. I love those analogies. That really breaks that down when we think about the two forms of that. And it gets Micah. I don't think you said this yet, but command is either the lowest or pretty low, right, in our database. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
it's
that?
it's the lowest. It's the least common to show up in somebody's top five when we take a look at our entire database. Um, Now, I don't know why that is, but I kind of think we need leaders, but we can't all be those leaders. So maybe there's a reason that, maybe there's a grander reason why we don't all have command. Maybe it is that we tend to parent out of it or advise people away from it. Maybe when it's in its raw form, it's really hard to handle. And so we find recognition or relationships through other pathways, and we stop using that potential. Um, that's my personal opinion of why it's so low. But if you do have command, we need you to understand it and to love it and to lean into it into ways that helps other people know it. Because the chances that you're going to meet somebody who has really beautiful command are low. It's just a numbers game. So we need you to be great at it.
I think as we think about complementary themes, and as I look at the notes, these are not what I thought you would say, by the way. So they're surprising to me, but very insightful. So, Mike, I want you to talk a little bit about, as we think about complementary themes, kind of work us through a couple of those.
Sure. So the idea here of complementary themes is that who should you partner with, or what themes could really enhance command. The first one I came up with was actually woo. So having somebody who's got some sort of a radar or a litmus test into how people are feeling and who you're winning over to your side, that could help command really feel out what barriers need to be circumvented. So command is going to blast through those barriers, but again, command doesn't have to blast through everything. Woo could sort of help us, I think, soften that approach and help inform the command of, hey, where do we really need you to bring the hammer down, and where can we maybe not go into battle. Significance was the same one that or a different one I came up with here. And again, I'm sorry that I use so much war language here. It really, I hope I'm not just feeding into the caricature of command being militant, because I don't mean for that to be. But if you think about this concept of selecting your battles, it just happens to be that word is a war move. But I think it's important for command to be understood as the ability to might blast through a barrier. So command and significance, what significance could bring command is the ability to locate the most meaningful barrier, or which battle do we need to win in order to win over the hearts and minds of everyone. And the third one I have here is futuristic. So on that I wrote, what needs to happen now to get where we are going? Sort of that ability to bring a partnership to command that would be not the same as strategic, but a little bit more, let's stretch this. Let's think about what do we have to do? What do we have to overcome immediately with that command to get to the future that we envision?
Micah, good conversations going on in the chat room about command and equals leadership. And do I have to have command in order to be a leader? Kind of back to a statement you made a second ago. Or can I lead from other themes as well?
So CliftonStrengths Finder tells us not what we do, but how we do it. People with command lead by being the first one. People with 33 other themes lead by doing something else. So to sort of simplify that answer, I think, no, you do not have to be command in order to be a leader. And if you do have command, you need to be leading something.
Yeah, and for me, when I looked at command, I always would say to myself, in the absence of leadership, I will always step up and take charge. That was one of the things that helped me kind of, grapple with it. Like in situations where I was not the leader, I can be a happy follower, but I cannot be in circumstances where there's no leadership. If there is none, I will step in and take charge. That's how that works. That's how that kind of plays out for me. But I think some clarification on that. No, we can lead from any of those, any of those themes. We talked about belief. That can be a strong leadership theme. We talked about learner and people that even learner, people who go and can lead from their learner, and so an important distinction there. When we think about likely and unlikely pairs, walk us through a little bit about what we see out of the database.
So this is where we get statistical, where you take a look at a random sample of 250,000 StrengthsFinder completes. The most likely pair to show up in someone's top 5 with command is strategic. And when you see those together, remember, strategic is about asking what if and if then, and being able to see the 40,000-foot view of what's going on, and from that view, select very quickly the best path to go forward. It's also about picking up on patterns. When you add strategic to command in one person, I think what you see is you add a pattern to the power. So it's about being very powerful, saying here's where we're going, and then being able to say this is what we're doing now because it fits into the big picture. Here's a non-war image that came up to my brain. So I was watching season 1, and people were talking about command, and Jim, you asked people in the chat function during season 1 to come up with fictional characters that they thought espoused command, and I couldn't help but notice that they were all men and they were all fighters of some kind. And so what came to my mind when I looked at command and strategic was Olivia Pope. So for those of you who've ever watched Scandal, it's that ability to, in a beautiful, wonderful suit and heels, she sweeps in, she says what needs to be done, and she's got a plan, and you follow her. And there's something about that presence that I think really encapsulates command. It's, you don't always know why you follow someone with command, but you do. They've got a presence. And in Strengths Explorer, to bring it back to kids, there's a theme called presence. And it is that you don't always know why you're attracted to these people. And that's where I think command can be quiet. It can be that thoughtful nudge in the direction that you know you need to go, but you just couldn't do it until somebody with command pushed you off the cliff. So gladiators in suits, command and strategic is Olivia Pope, in my own humble opinions.
I think that's a good example, for sure. I think sometimes, too, we don't know why we follow, but we want to follow them. I think maybe in its mature state, we're drawn to that leadership. We want to, oftentimes we don't know why we want to do what they want us to do, but we do it because we're comfortable in it. It's this presence, it's this comfort that it brings to us that, you've all been in that leadership situation. You got a leader up front, and they're obviously uncomfortable. They don't know what's going on. They're not themselves, and you're just not as apt to follow them because they don't make you comfortable. But we've all been in those situations, and I think politicians do this. Since we're in this time when here in America we're going to elect our next president. I think politicians sometimes have that ability to come in and make that. They have to, right? It's part of their job of getting people to vote for them. They have to make people feel comfortable in their leadership. Now, here in the United States, that's always questionable. But that being said, Micah, let's think about some personal reflections and observations on this theme.
Sure. You know what, Jim? I forgot the least likely pairs.
Oh, so sorry. No, you didn't forget. I just blew right past them. Sorry.
Sorry. Here we go. So least likely, it happens very uncommon, but still can happen. It's a tie. Command and developer tend not to show up in people's top 5, but if they did, I see a powerful coach. So somebody who can say, developers about incremental growth and understanding how can you get better, how can you get better, how can you get better. When you add command to that, it's you can get better by doing, maybe by doing this, but it's not necessarily that strategy that says here's the step you need to take, but it's the tremendous, I think, belief in others is what you would see with command and developer. Also tied for the least likely is command and discipline. Discipline's an executing theme that's all about creating structure. I think when you add that to command, it just brings that structure out of your own brain and your own way of working, and probably imposes that structure on others. So we are all going to follow the process with command and discipline versus I have a process with discipline alone.
Love it. All right, let's dig in a little bit to those reflections. We've covered one of them, but work us through. What are your thoughts on this, Micah?
I love command. I think we probably don't have enough of it. I think there's a comfort in it. And when you mentioned, Jim, following leaders who are comfortable leading, there is an element of, if you like a okay, so if Goldilocks is hunting for the best chair, somebody with command is going to have to feel out, which of these seats in this organization or in this role or in my life feel a little bit too much like I'm following, which feel maybe a little bit too much like I'm leading, and then they're going to get in that front seat, the front seat of the bus, and say this is just right. And there's something really awesome about the comfort that command has with leading. That doesn't mean they have to be the CEO. It can mean that they can be incredibly comfortable being the first follower, or that they can be incredibly comfortable letting somebody else take the spotlight, as long as they trust in the ability that that person has. That in itself is a leadership aspect, being able to say, here's where I put my endorsement behind. And it's that comfort in sort of being in charge. So because of that, command needs some cause or some people to influence. It also, command hungers for a challenge. If you're leading somebody with command, it's important to know that they expect some pushback, but by the very nature of their presence, they might not get it, because others assume that, wow, if you know that the way somebody with command thinks is by pushing through barriers and creating explosions, you might be more hesitant to confront them. But really what command loves is this push for truth. Not in the same way that somebody with analytical is going to push for facts and figures and numbers and data that give us truth. Somebody with command is pushing for clarity. And sometimes that might mean that the person with command needs to say, hey, feel free to challenge me on this. Somebody with command can get a little bit bored if there's not enough of a challenge, or if there's not enough things to provide clarity to. So I would think if you're coaching somebody with command, it's important to feel out whether they have a cause that they believe in, or within the work that they're already doing, what they feel they're furthering. They're really just unwilling to hide from clarity, from truth. They don't really love living in this space of ambiguity, and they can be the person who says, hey, guys, I don't understand what we're talking about here. And then all of a sudden you see everyone else in the room go, oh, yeah, I don't either. And so it's that ability to say, let's push for some clarity here. Something that people with high command can do to help others is, think about how can you help people make commitments? How can you help stretch others' self-confidence? I like to coach people with command to look for places where they can lend their influence. So rather than, we talked about raw versus mature, where raw can be a little bit self-centered. I think mature command can be, who do I need to speak for? Or what is my team going through that I can be the voice of, what is the flag that I can carry if I'm constantly going to be the first person going into battle? And the last thing that I really want people to leave with, because this is what stuck with me the most about command, is it's something that Al Winsman, who has command, told me. And he said, you know what, you can be intimidating with command. You don't want to intimidate your people, but you do want to intimidate the enemy. The other side of intimidation is inspiration. And having worked with Al, and also with, I have another really good friend who's actually a coach to me, and she has high command. And there are times where, after we've talked through things and in good coaching form, I've come up with my own solutions, she can come back and pick up the phone and be like, Mike, I know you haven't done this, and I know you can, so do it. And it's just that, kick in the butt that I need to move forward, and somebody with command can do it that way. And it's not loud, it's not explosive, it's incredibly inspirational. So it's intimidation and inspiration, I think, go hand in hand, and it's just knowing when to use them and how to use them.
Yeah, when you say that, you remind me of at the end of Lord of the Rings, when the king is out going down. It's their final battle. They're going to take on, everybody. They're surrounded, and the king goes up and down the line, banging his sword against everybody else's swords. It's not intended to intimidate his own troops, right? He's not yelling at them or shouting at them or making them, before they go into battle, making them feel bad. He is revving them up so that the enemy hears this, right? Very, very intentional. That they would. And so I think that's as I think about that, when I think about command and this idea of inspiration, I'll think of that kind of that metaphor of being out front, being a leader who's out front, leading the charge, inspiring those behind him, in an attempt, and I like that, even to intimidate those of the enemy or that which needs to be done, even if it's a problem, right, of trying to have a group overcome a problem, of being able to handle that. So thanks for that. That's a good, I'm going to use that one here in the future. That's good. Micah, let's dig in a little bit to our theme dynamics section as we think about the pairings on these. You encouraged me to throw a new, did we get the desired result that we wanted this week? As we sent, just a reminder, every single week we vote on these pairs that we're going to go over. If you're in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/called-to-coach, and every week you guys get a chance to vote on the four, and then the fifth is always the one that we do the next week. Micah, did we get better results this week? You picked the four instead of me picking them, so I hope.
Yeah. And by the way, there's no good or bad results. What we were doing is we just wanted to make sure we weren't doubling up on what we were already talking about with most and least likely. But yeah, we got some fun results. So,
good. Well, let's take a peek at them. I think they should be full screen for you guys now. And the first set, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but command and empathy.
Yeah, how cool is this? So command and empathy. Empathy is about feeling what other people are feeling. So when you take a look here at what this says, it's you can sense emotions that other people may not notice. Empathy, right? When you express a strong emotion, it's clear to everyone. So I love this thought of there's a noticed and a not noticed. And what command brings to empathy is it brings it out loud and it makes it be something that other people know about. Whereas you can have empathy without command and you could be sitting in a room and knowing how other people are feeling. But empathy with command, you do something with it. So I think about it as, if you were to boil it down to two words, command and empathy makes you a clarifying advisor.
Oh, very good. Let's look at command and strategic.
So we talked a little bit about this one. I think about command and strategic as being somebody who's got a plan constantly. The plan might shift, but they are an integral part of moving that plan along. So your willingness to consider all options in advance means that when you take charge, you can prevent futile effort. So command is, I know where we're going, and I'm not afraid to take you there.
I love that last phrase about prevent futile efforts because, and I know we're not talking about strategic today, but I think this is an area for those who are high in strategic can really add value in teams. Is oftentimes teams, if there's not a lot of clarity, they will spin on, just spin and spin and spin and spin on ideas trying to do different things. And I love this idea. I think it's a maximizer concept too, and really important in group settings that we get to the best solution and move quickly. How many teams have you watched Micah, just spin right on that? And so to my strategic friends, now in the command, in this situation, if you have these two, I think you really specialize in taking groups and prevent them from spinning too long an idea. Let's make some decisions and now let's move forward, right?
I have a really good friend who has found herself lately being in a lot of board meetings that are literally there for strategic planning purposes. And she's the person who sits at the end of the board table and says, what do we really mean by all this? And there's that element of clarity that command brings to strategy that says, we're not going to just go down a what if. Even if that what if is well planned out, we're going to go down the right path that has a lot of clarity to it.
Yeah, much like when we think about command and deliberative. That's another one, right? Command really brings it to it. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so deliberative, interesting. So because we get to talk about deliberative right after strategic, this is my favorite contrasting image. I think about strategic as being Google Maps where you see the map picture, and deliberative is Google Maps where you go through the steps. It's two different ways of thinking about, or maybe street view is deliberative. So deliberative, before you take that first step, you think through every possible flaw in your plan. So it's very cautious, very detailed, sometimes takes a little bit longer, but you move forward in a risk-averse way, and it's typically a little bit more thought out than strategic, where strategic is very fast because you're picking up on patterns. And deliberative is an executing theme. Strategic is a thinking theme. So when you add deliberative to command, I immediately thought about a very thoughtful general. I used to work in our London office, and Churchill's War Rooms is right up the street, and it was just this. It's almost a shrine built to thinking. And you can go in and you can see, wow, there was a lot of planning. There was a lot of careful, sort of cautious risk aversion that happened in these rooms. And they were still the same people who said, okay, we're confident in this and we're going forward. So you could be deliberative without command and maybe only be planning your own strategy, whereas deliberative with command, I think you're probably doing something that somehow influences other people.
We often think of deliberative as slow, but I think when we cover deliberative in 3 or 4 weeks, I think it's coming up, I think sometimes it can be anything but slow, but more thoughtful than we think of slow, right? So that's another one of those biases, right?
Yeah, we think about it as slow because most of us can't imagine giving that much thought without having to have time. But depending on your other themes, deliberative doesn't have to be slow. It's just detailed.
Yeah, very good. And let's look at command and harmony.
Thanks, guys, for making me do this. This was the one I was hoping nobody would ask me to put together because I had to work really hard to get my head wrapped around this because for the longest time I would use these two as contrasting themes. You know, harmony likes to move forward based on finding areas of agreement, and command can move forward by confrontation. And I spent a week trying to figure out how to explain this to us, but it came to me. And this is where I think about probably real people who would have command and harmony would be some sort of powerful, challenging diplomat. And I think almost like if you had a really important conversation going on at the UN, you'd want somebody with command and harmony who can say, you know what, here's the place that we all agree, so let's go for it. Sometimes I think harmony without command could know where we have to go, but struggle to be the person who stands up and says it, because that can feel confrontational, and at harmony's very nature, it's what they want to avoid. But you know what? There is a little bit of a difference in the motivation behind these two. Harmony hungers for relationships and forward progress. Command hungers for challenge. And so if you put those together, it's that ability to say, I'm unafraid of the potential conflict that I will have to get through in order to get us to consensus and build a greater relationship.
And I love the last statement here too. You create consensus by managing the strong emotions of others, right? And think about those situations where the emotions are charged and they are charged highly, and yet we still have to move forward and make progress. They're asking in chat, is command and harmony a real thing? Micah, that was the question in the chat room. Is it a real thing?
Of course it is. Yeah. You know what? There's no two themes that don't show up together. And statistically, like, we haven't found ones that just have zero correlation. They never show up. So of course it's a real thing. And thinking about theme dynamics, this can be really fun for us strengths folks to spend our time thinking about the what if you blend these two together and you became a person, what would it be? The truth is, if you coach somebody or if you love somebody who has themes that seem somehow at odds with each other, just ask them what it's like for them. Typically, people can tell you right away because it's pathways of behavior that they live with every day. So, of course, It's a real thing.
No, it's great. It's great. And you'll run into people like that and ask them lots of questions. This is, I think, as a coach, even as a non-coach, as you're talking about people and their themes, don't do the talking, right? Don't do the name it. Ask them questions. Let them talk about it. I think you'll learn way more about the themes when you start asking people about how does it play out for you? How do you feel like you're using it? Is it a basement or balcony? At what times is it in those places, right? How do you feel like your maturity level is? And let them talk. It's just amazing when you start talking to other people and let them talk about it, how powerful these can be. Speaking of talking, in 2 weeks, because we're taking a week off. So if you're listening to the video here or you're live, we are not here next week. Jim will be in Colorado skiing. I just planned it that way. We're taking a week off. And then we'll be back next week with communication. Micah, as we look at those two together, command and communication, let's talk about that.
Two influencing themes. They both need other people. Communication explains those of us who lead through words. People with high communication can put other people's thoughts into words. They can also be very great at putting their own into words. The thing that I think really differentiates communication is it's that they think out loud. And it can be written words or spoken words. When you combine that with command, you get a very persuasive storyteller. You get somebody who maybe can be a little bit more softer because they have that ability to immediately connect to what other people are thinking or looking for in terms of I can put your complicated thoughts into words, and therefore to other people that might look like I understand you. So it could be a little bit, it softens the command a little bit, I would imagine. I think it's probably somebody who uses words to get through barriers a little bit maybe more than action, or at least the first attempt to break down a barrier is to talk your way through it.
Mm-hmm. I often think of even like a pastor in this kind of role, this influential, taking a group. I mean, because think as a pastor, you can't tell people what to do, right? You can, but they choose whether they're going to follow it or not. It's not a job. It's not mandatory kind of thing. And so you have to have this high influence. And yet, at least here in North America and in our churches, a lot of pastors high in communication because that's, they get their one chance at you every single week, either from the pulpit or from the platform or via a podcast from that standpoint. So great, I think this combo, that's kind of what I think of as kind of today's modern minister who is out there using all different forms of communication to kind of reach people for the message. So
I
cool.
think religion aside, the word minister for communication and command is great. So it's somebody who's furthering a cause and using words to do it.
Okay, good. Well, let's see if I can get things back together here. We're creating a vortex of a video there. This is the part where we allow you to jump in if you've got command high. And by the way, let me just say to the chat room, great work today, chat room. You guys, if you've never joined us live for one of these things that we do called Theme Thursday, the chat room has been amazing. I don't know if you've been following it, but there has been tons of great dialogue.
It's been really good. So I've been trying to follow it. Usually I can follow a lot easier, but you all are just, we could have just said, hey, command, discuss, and you guys would have had it.
It's kind of been that way. The chat room has been a show within a show today. And so if you haven't joined us live here in the past, we'd love to have you do that. A great way to get in there, and you can learn just as much from the chat room. And we record each one of these, so if you're chatting away and you miss some stuff, you can always go back. It's available for instant replay as soon as we're done. So we'd love to have you go back and do that if you need to take some notes there for your companion guide. All right, I've dropped the link in the chat room. If you are wanting to join us, if you have command high, we'd love to hear from you. The goal of this, have you jump in and just give us a little bit, what I talked about earlier. We're going to say, all right, tell us a little bit about your command, and we kind of want to hear how it's working for you and how you're using it, and what situations is it in the basement, and what situations is it in the balcony. And so we'd love to have you do that and jump in and join us. It's a little bit of a trick. Just click on the link. You'll have to log in using a Gmail account, and then you can join. If we get a couple people in at the same time, we'd ask you just to mute your line until we get to you. So we'll wait a few minutes to see if we can get. Carol Ann is always good to jump in here, even though I don't think command's in her top 5. But we'll see if we can get somebody here to jump. Micah, as we're waiting for somebody to jump in, way back when I first took StrengthsFinder 10 or so years ago, command was in my top 5. I took it a second time. The current 5 that I kind of claim now, I took 7 or 8 years ago now, the Arranger, Communication, Maximizer, let me try it again. Arranger, Woo, Maximizer, Communication, Activator. I'm trying to think about 3 things at once here. And so command has kind of dropped out. When we talk about themes moving around that way, we've had people who've taken it multiple times. What does that mean when things move around? Why does it, or why can it change from that standpoint?
So first of all, I think it's important to know that our test-retest ratio is right around, it's actually higher than 0.7. So when you have a psychometric tool like StrengthsFinder, you have to have a strong test-retest ratio in order to say this is predictable. That's much higher than most test-retest are. So that's the scientific part of it. It means about 70% of the time you'd end up with the same top 5. When you don't, typically what we see is people's top 10 tend to rearrange themselves. So, and I like to think of your top 5 as your dominant hand, and the next 5 are your other hand. You use them all. It's hard enough to get your brain around and your intention straight around 5. Don Clifton wanted us only ever to know 1 of our themes because he said, that was going to get hard enough to understand for your entire life. There's a lifetime of work that can happen in 1 theme. So if you take it again and it changes, it's probably just that probably it is just that your top 10 are sort of rearranging themselves, or it means that maybe you've developed some new pathways. We don't typically see huge changes in whatever's 17 or higher doesn't typically jump up to your top 5 or so. I always like to end this question by saying taking it again is interesting. Doing something with it is 1,000 times more important. So command is number 16 for me, the one time I've taken StrengthsFinder. But this is where my command comes out. and it's not command, it's just, I don't know. But you know what? It's interesting to take it again. But if you are taking it again just because you're interested in it, you're really missing out on the developmental opportunities of focusing around the themes that you want to claim.
Yeah, and work with what you've got and start aiming them, right? That's the real key. We have this name it, claim it, name it. I make a joke sometimes when it's in the community, when we're in the basement, we're a name it, and name it environment where all we do is talk about what it could be. And there's so much unlocked potential in this aim it that we've got to actually start focusing on, okay, how are you using it? How is it playing out? This is kind of what we're trying to get to when we ask folks to come in and join us here, is how are you using it and how are you developing it? I think that's even as an equally important question is what kind of things are you doing? What kind of investment are you making, right? Talents plus or times investments equals strengths, right? Yeah. What are you doing from an investment standpoint that is actually moving you forward? These are designed to make us better versions of ourselves. Jeremy, I got to coach with Jeremy I got to present with Jeremy Petrosini on Monday, which was a real privilege. I often don't get out in public. We do this called The Coach together, but this was in a public setting. He actually said something interesting. You said the top 5 are like your right hand. The next 5 are like your left hand. He would say your bottom 5 are like your non-dominant foot. So if you were trying to write, imagine writing your name with your right hand, right? If you're right-handed, your dominant hand. Then switch that and write it with your less dominant hand. Right? You can do it. Now put that thing between your toes and try and write. Right? Those are the bottom 5. Right? When we think about and we make all 34 available. If you're interested in seeing what those are, you can purchase an upgrade on the Strength Center to get to all 34 in ranked order. But I never thought of it that way, Micah, as sometimes it's so bad. We often say writing left-handed or you're like your bottom 5. It's like writing left-footed. With that thing between your toes. And
usually it's I love that analogy because it's not something you do and you don't need to. So usually your bottom 5 aren't getting in your way, unless you lost both of your hands and had to write with your feet, in which case you'd figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, and you could. Right, you could, like you said, you could get that done, but oftentimes it's really difficult. It's not very good, and it's really, really hard. So as you think through those pieces. Well, Micah, I don't think we're going to get anybody to join us today.
Is this ironic that command is not jumping in here?
I know. I think there's just maybe a little fear in the technology, and that's okay. We do this every single week, and if you're thinking about it, your theme's coming up. If you go to the coaches blog, so coaching.gallup.com, there's a GWSW tab, and that actually lists all the themes by week that we're doing. The other question is, so if you want to know when they're coming up, that lists it by week. 2, you mentioned the Eventbrite site, so gallup.eventbrite.com. Everything we do, including all the Call to Coach series that we're a part of, are available there on the Eventbrite site. So make sure you bookmark that and you get signed up for the reminder. That's really key. You get an email from us. Oh, hey, Debbie's going to... Let's see. I haven't seen Debbie in a while. Let's see if we can get her in here. Debbie. So anyways, gallup.eventbrite.com. Debbie, can you hear us?
I can. And how's this for you? Am I making... Oh, my God, it's so dark, isn't it?
It is very dark, yes.
Oh, my God, what am I going to do about that really, really fast? Has it turned... How does that work?
Is it nighttime already in the UK?
It is nighttime in the UK. Hi to everybody.
Good to see you. We've never done it before in the dark with a light. So this is hopefully this is your command in action here, making it happen.
Well, do you know what? I just had to jump in, but give me the time, and we just got a couple of minutes. I noticed the whole call. I was just dying to take over. I mean, I'm sorry the light is so bad, guys, but I was just dying to oh no, it's not like that. Oh my goodness, I don't agree with that. Oh, who is going to lead this in the right direction? Oh, all right, we can go that way if you want to.
So tell us, how does your command? Where's command for you, and
It's number 3.
And how does it play out for you?
3.
Yeah.
And it plays out for me really in. I have activator, so it's quite a challenge. It's like I'm impatient as well as wanting to take over. And I have to so pull myself to individualization sometimes. I just have to really be interested in the person by person experience I get. Otherwise, it's just, it's just really a challenge for me to hold back and wait. And the thing that I noticed in what you were saying that was very interesting was I'm just coming up to 60 and I'm grappling with what shall I do now with life and empowering other people to lead rather than taking over myself is the challenge I'm dealing with as a command person.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That delegation piece may be difficult, right? And in its raw form, you want to do all the leading as opposed to letting others do some of the leading. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it's really quite hard to. It's not hard to delegate. It's just hard when people don't know how to get themselves going. In the activator, like people really don't know how to get things going, and then it's hard when they just don't go. They just don't take the risk when listen, if you just get in action, something will get moving.
Yeah. Debbie, where are you that you are in the dark and you have just a single light?
It's so funny, isn't it? It's not so dark in the room, but I had the computer connected to the big screen, but the camera wasn't on it. And I had real problems getting the install to work in the Google Hangouts. It kept going wrong, and I really wanted to leap in and say it was a great conversation, really a rich conversation. And I think there's something about really understanding the emotional clarity of people with command, that there is something they feel a real emotional clarity about, and if you can somehow connect with that, it's not quite as dramatic or explosive. If that can be gotten or experienced or accepted or brought to the surface, it's an incredibly useful way of doing things. But I quite like this dark light. It's a very command space, isn't it?
It's a little intimidating, to be honest, or you're being interrogated. One of the two. Not sure. Debbie, anything else you'd add to what we talked about?
I don't think so. I think it was just a great conversation. I have a friend who's got empathy, number 1. That's a very, very, for me, that's very good. I think the partnerships really matter for command people.
Well, Debbie, thanks for jumping in. We want to get Jan in before we've got to drop because Mike has got to go teach. But Debbie, great. Thanks for making the effort. You get the most effort award for joining us. Thank you.
And the coolest ambiance. Thanks, Debbie.
Love it. Debbie, let's switch over to Jan. Jan, thanks for jumping in. Can you hear us? Hopefully we can hear her. She looks like. Can you hear us, Jan?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We can hear you.
I'm hearing you.
Can you hear us okay?
I'm hearing you twice.
Oh, you probably have 2 windows open. So just find the window where you're listening to the recorded version of us, the one you were listening on before. Just close that.
Right, done that.
And good. Now you should only hear us once. Yay! That was probably maddening to hear two sessions go. Yes, a little crazy in the mind. So, Jan, we just have a few minutes. Tell us a little bit about your command.
Oh, well, as I mentioned in the chat room, I get family bullied because of my command. I'm the one, and I've just been bullied into the chat room as well by Dion. Thanks, Dion. But yeah, so being bullied in the family.
Encouraged is the word.
Encouraged. No, I'm the one, if somebody doesn't, their food's not right, something's not right, or I'm the one who says, excuse me, can we get this sorted out? And my kids literally just go, oh. So in the workplace, I was mentioning in the chat room as well, I did a when I was very, very young, a management course, and when I was assigned as being team leader, I knew that I was leading the team, about 10 people, and when the assessor went round, everybody else said yes, I was leading it, apart from this one guy, because he obviously didn't want to be led. But I was very much doing it not in terms of telling people what they needed to do, but I don't know how I did it, but it was about nudging people along. So, and I think I've got some of the other pairings that other people have. I've got most of my top 5 are the bottom 5 most common. So I pair it with strategic, ideation, self-assurance, activator, and so command comes in at number 5. So, but I have responsibility and maximizer, which kind of make me do things and make me do things big. So it can cause problems. So when I first got my top 5, and for quite a long while after, I felt kind of self-conscious about self-assurance and command, because it felt like it was, what do you do? What does it mean? What do I do with it? And over time, you can remember times about in your past when you've been able to sort of just know what the right thing was to do, and help people to move forwards. But a lot of things that you were talking about, Micah, really resonated with me. In terms of, I can't remember them all now, but it's about not wasting time, not doing something and that's futile. So really being able to pick that information out really quickly. And I never appreciated how fast I could assimilate masses of information and just go for it. And with my activator, I've always never ever thought I would have theme envy for deliberative, but I just loved the way you explained command and deliberative, and it gave me this image of some really smart, really grounded leader that just knew the right thing to do. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'd quite like to have deliberative. But it's right.
Micah, wouldn't we kind of say a wise leader when we put those two together? I mean, wouldn't that be a really good description of, because they've thought through those pieces and have kind of anticipated maybe some things that could come up? What do you think, Micah?
Yeah, like a sage advisor who's also going to lead the charge.
Yeah.
They're always men, aren't they? But it's William Wallace and Nelson are the sort of the two that come to mind for me in that context. But I think we really need to work hard on trying to come up with some images of women who have command. I suppose in the UK we'd think of Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, that'd be a good example.
Miss Piggy. I don't know if it's a good woman, but I think about Miss Piggy. You know, she's not afraid to be out there and to say what needs to be said.
Yeah, good. Jan, you said self-assurance too, right? And so how does your command and self-assurance, when it's in the balcony, what does it look like? What's the best of you with those two together?
I think it's being not afraid to stand up and just know that it's very clearly obvious that is what needs to be done. Just do it. Mm-hmm. And whether that's the person, so another embarrassing mother story is at the end of a concert, and the performance is over and the head teacher is at the front saying what a wonderful event it's been, how amazing all the students and teachers have done. And I'm sitting at the back, a bit deaf in one ear, the windows are open, there's seagulls outside because it's a really hot summer evening, and I can't hear what she's saying. So I'm the one who stands up and says, "Excuse me, could you use the microphone?" And my kids still, die with embarrassment, but I'm the one who does it because it makes it better for everybody. And I just instinctively know it's the right thing to do. So I'm not afraid to speak out.
Yeah, an advocate for the group, and I think that's needed. And somebody needs to stand up and say, "Hey, wait a minute, things need to be done here." So, Jan, thanks for jumping in. I got to let Micah go. She's teaching a course here, and so I got to let her go. And I'll wrap things up. Jan, thanks for jumping in and making it happen. It's great to meet you, great to see you, and thanks for jumping in on Theme Thursday.
I'm going to leave real quick, Jim, but I want to end on what Jan said, in that she probably is a fantastic female voice for what command can be. We do need to come up with more characters and analogies that bring this beautiful sort of, I think, mother bear presence is where command comes from. And there was something that Jan said that I don't want anyone to miss, and it's what's best for the group. So having people who have the courage and the ability and the voice and the presence of command, it makes the group better. I hope you all love it, and I'm going to go.
All right, Micah, we'll see you. Jan, you're welcome to stay. I'm just going to end the show, or if you want to hang up, you can do that too. So thanks for joining us here on Theme Thursday. As we wrap things up, I'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available on the Gallup Strength Center. Just go out gallupstrengthcenter.com. Did I say that right? gallupstrengthcenter.com. Yeah. And send us your questions or comments, contributions, even if you'd like to be a guest blogger. We have some spots available on the coach's blog. If that's something, we're not able to take everything, but if you're thinking about a blog, you got an idea, you got some stuff you've already written, send that to us, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all our past ones. We have a ton of them out there if this is your first time listening to us. It's all available on the coach's blog at coaching.gallup.com, and has links to the Facebook, YouTube page, our iTunes and RSS feeds, the iPhone and Android apps are available, as well as all our weekly Strengths Wisdom program. Again, it's at the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you found this interesting, I'd ask you to share it. But if you're thinking about becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, or want to get a list of all of our courses that are available around the globe, we have a brand new site for you, courses, there we go, courses.gallup.com. Send us an email at certification@gallup.com if you have questions around that. And if you're interested in discovering, I mentioned this earlier, all 34 of your talent themes, that report is available. For pricing information, head out to the Gallup Strength Center. That's just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Again, if you found this helpful, we'd ask that you please share it. Well, thank everyone for joining us, and we'll look forward to the next 2 weeks from now, Theme Thursday. Goodbye, everybody.